Hi, and welcome to the session. In this session, we are going to take a dive into discussing hacking humans. We're going to look at some methods and some tips and some strategies that we have discovered doing penetration testing and social engineering engagements to help you create social engineering scenarios that actually work. So who am I? I am William Price. I help organizations identify cybersecurity weaknesses, resolve them, and reduce the risk of breaches at CyberX. And over the years, I've conducted a lot of penetration tests. And what I want to focus on today is social engineering engagements and some of the methods we've developed for going after individuals to get them to take the action that we want, social engineering them. And so I think that's a good starting point is, so what exactly is social engineering? And the commonly agreed definition is social engineering is any act that convinces someone to take an action that may or may not be in their best interest. And this action that they take is going to depend on the type of social engineering engagement or scenario that you are in. If this is physical social engineering, trying to physically access a facility, this act that they take might be allowing me to enter the building. It might be opening the door for someone who should not be in the building. If this is email social engineering or phishing, it might be getting them to click on a link. It might be getting them to provide me their credentials. Or it might be, I call them up on the phone. I want to find out a particular piece of information. I want to know what type of antivirus they're using. And I'll create a scenario wherein they will tell me the kind of antivirus they're using without having their suspicions aroused. They have taken an action that is not in their best interest. It is not in that company's or that individual's best interest for me as an attacker to know what kind of antivirus they have. Why social engineering? Why is that an attack method that we should be worried about as defenders? And why is it something we should be utilizing as the offensive security, the offensive side of things? And why does it even work? And that's what I want to talk about on this slide. Why is social engineering so effective these days? And if you look at the left, we have a traditional network environment. We have computers. If we had some cloud instances, we had a VPN that connected us up to our cloud instances, and we, from the user's perspective, it still appeared to be inside the network. Now on the right, we look at what our IT environment has morphed into in the last decade or more. And if you think about your job or the company you work for and the applications that are in use, it's not as common for every server to be housed at a data center inside the company in some kind of network closet, server room, whatever. It is much more common now that we are using applications, platform as a service, applications as a service, the cloud. We're using Dropbox, Office 365, ShareFile by Citrix, SharePoint, Google Drive. And if you think about how do you get to each of these applications now? You go to a portal and you log in. You might be asked for some kind of verification, two-factor authentication, but we go and we log in. And this logging in my opinion, has conditioned our users so that it's normal to just go and log in. And that sort of lowers their awareness of a phishing incident that could happen. So according to this statistic, in 2017, this research that was done, 70% of workers feel that they are overworked at their jobs. They feel like they don't have enough time in the day. They can't keep up with everything they need to do. They're rushing, trying to get their job done, trying to get everything done they need to so they can get out the door by 5, by 4, by 3, whenever time they get off. They don't want to have to take work home. They're trying to hurry. And hurry and rush, quote, dulls your senses. It dulls and causes you to rush through things and ignore flags that if you were taking the time to be cognizant of what you're doing, they are rushing through these and ignoring them. And that, as an attacker, is a great thing for me. And again, this is 2017. Think about 2020. I venture to say 95% of workers are feeling overworked or stressed out. They're working at home. They've got children running around at the same time, children on laptops or iPads or whatever, learning. Everyone's at home, and it adds to the stress. It adds to the overwork. And we saw in 2020, the social engineering engagements that we conducted, our success rate was much, much higher than it had been in past years. And we believe that that is a part of the reason. Another factor that contributes to the effectiveness and the success rate of social engineering is, as humans, we have an innate tendency to want to trust the people around us. We want to trust our family. We want to trust our relatives, our friends. We want to trust people. We want to talk to people. We want to relate to people. And we want to be helpful, and we want to help people. We've been taught to have good manners as children, all the way growing up. Taught to have good manners, how to be kind. And it's been ingrained into us to help people, to trust people. According to Valley Mail, in June of 2019, there were 3 billion fake emails being sent a day. Now, if you think about the numbers of workers that there are, the number of emails you receive in a day, 3 billion fake emails, that's a lot of fake emails. That's 3/7 of the people in the world are receiving one fake email a day. That's every other day you are receiving a fake email. That fake email could be spam, it could be a scam, some kind of phishing, but that is something to be aware of. And again, on the topic why social engineering is important to focus on, why it's important to test social engineering, to conduct social engineering engagements, to test your employees, to train your employees, or as an attacker to conduct social engineering attacks, to include them in the services that are offered by your company. 3% of malware, and this is according to KnowBe4, 3% of malware seeks to exploit a strictly technical flaw. 97% of malware targets a user in some capacity, in some way, in that attack lifecycle. If this is a ransomware, they will most of the time start with a phish, get credentials. So now that they have find a vulnerability, they can send a payload, they have credentials that they can move laterally inside the organization. So let's look at some cases in which social engineering has caused data breaches in organizations. You guys remember prior to the 2016 election, there was the incident with John Podesta at the DNC. He received a phishing email, and if you look at the email, of course, the format is bad. There's lots of red flags that should have gone off. There's a bit.ly address that you can see towards the bottom with the change password. Lots of red flags. The domain that this is coming from is Google email. And the story is that he sent it to IT. They meant to say this is illegitimate, and they accidentally said it's legitimate. Either way, this should have been a clear red flag. The IP address we see here is coming from Ukraine, and we all know the story, what happened. They got into his email. That was a pretty important breach, all caused by phishing. If you remember around 2014, the Sony hack. Sony was putting out a movie the North Koreans didn't like. The North Koreans retaliated. They phished some people at Sony to get VPN credentials. Then they were connected to the network. They deployed a wiper malware that completely wiped their systems. Did a lot of damage to Sony, and it all started with phishing. Close to home where I am, not far away in Greenville, South Carolina, there was a cyber attack at the water facility, and this started by an employee who clicked a phishing email. And we all know there's a lot of talk about critical infrastructure. If you're familiar with the 16 critical industries, healthcare, financial, banking, oil, gas, all of those, this is a huge level of risk, especially in these types of environments where we have networks that are connected. An employee on the corporate side can get phished, and that can connect over into robots and manufacturing, and it can be a really big mess. And on that note, the DHS was discussing a ransomware incident that hit the U.S. gas pipeline operator a couple years ago. And operations were halted for 2 days at that gas compression company. Now, and think about the down the chain effects this has. They're unable to compress gas. It's unable to go to the distributors. It's just unable to go to the end users. So now individuals are running out of gas. They might not be able to heat their homes. This can get to be a really big mess. And it starts with a simple attack like phishing. Okay, so moving on to the social engineering lifecycle. And this is the typical process we follow when we are conducting a social engineering engagement. It begins with information gathering. I want to know as much about an individual as I can. I want to know their name, where they live, what they like, the TV shows they like, the music they like to listen to, their hobbies, the things they like to do out on the weekends, what they like to do after work, the restaurants they like to go to, their pet's name, their children's name, everyone in their family's birthdays, their favorite color. If I can get a YouTube video of the person, I know what they talk like, the words they use, their intonations. I want to know as much about this individual as I possibly can and the company I'm going after. Then, and depending on the scenario, the next step is building a relationship and rapport with the individual. And again, this depends on the attack scenario. If you're phishing, how much time you have. This is a prolonged engagement. Get to know this individual, get to like them. If this is a physical pen test with a decent amount of time, maybe I'll bump into them at a restaurant while they're out for lunch. And they'll like me, and then start a conversation. And now I know from my information gathering, I know a certain nonprofit that they support, and I support that nonprofit, and we become friends. And then I can build my relationship and my rapport with that individual from there. And then we move on to exploitation. And exploitation is where I craft a scenario to social engineer them. Remember, social engineering is to get them to take an action that is not in their best interest. Maybe this individual that I have met at the burger shop 2 blocks away from the office location where they work, maybe I get into a conversation with them and I want to know how many cameras are in the lobby. Maybe I throw in something like, yeah, I heard you guys' place is like Fort Knox. There's 20 cameras just in the lobby. And they say, no, that's not true. There's only 3 cameras in the lobby. And boom, I have exploited them and, in this case, executed to get that information. And that's the social engineering life cycle that we follow. So when it comes to social engineering, let's talk about some tips for actually accomplishing the goal, the mission, to attain that piece of information you're looking for, to get them to take that action, to click, to log in, bypass multi-factor authentication. We've done that in engagements. How do you accomplish that goal? And so the thing to understand as you craft social engineering attacks is people respond basically one of 2 ways. They either respond logically, they think about it, and they respond, or they respond out of emotion. I'm excited, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm sad, I'm intimidated, and I skip logic and I respond based on an emotion. And as a social engineering, that is where you can get individuals to do what you want. That is where you can get them to give you information, click on a link, take an action, log into a fake portal. If you can get them to bypass logic and respond based on emotion. So what are some of the emotions? Fear. I'm afraid of something that might happen to me, or I'm afraid of a circumstance. I'm afraid of authority. I'm afraid to lose my job if I don't do what I've been asked to do. I'm afraid money's being stolen from my bank account, whatever the scenario happens to be. Excitement. I'm happy. I'm going to get something. Someone's giving me something. I'm getting a promotion. I'm getting money added to my 401k. I'm going to get a free iPhone. Excitement. Authority. Someone higher up in the company is telling me to do something. I have to obey. They are authority. Depending on the scope and what is allowed or not allowed, maybe you are some kind of governmental organization, environmental organization that's going to do an inspection. Authority. Sympathy. I mentioned earlier about the if you find someone that supports, say, a nonprofit or a certain foundation, or you find they are sympathetic to a certain cause, that is something that can be used against people. Maybe they feel a certain way about politics, if that's in scope for the engagement. A lot of times politics is out of scope. Maybe they are sympathetic for something that has happened to someone in the news, and they are talking about it on social media. That might be a perfect way to come in with a social engineering scenario. Ego stroking, making someone feel good. We've used this on multiple organizations, making someone feel important. There was a penetration test we did for a pretty large financial company. They work with a lot of banks and a lot of back-end transactions. Phishing, we were doing a social engineering engagement to phish their employees. And we came up with a scenario. This organization had recently been recognized by a certain board, pretty reputable board in their field, the financial space. They've been recognized as a leading in the industry. So we created a scenario where we faked like we were from a certain large media corporation newspaper, and we had heard about their recognition, their award. We went to the marketing, the head of marketing, the vice president over of a marketing department, and we wanted to ask them questions about, do an interview, and we sent over the questions, and it was shared, quote, via Office 365, because we knew that's what they were using. And it took them to a fake portal where they logged in, and we got their credentials, and we were able to even bypass multi-factor authentication. This person felt important, and they wanted to take these actions because it made them feel important at their company. So we talked about building rapport with an individual. And this is something I'll come back to a little later. When I'm conducting a social engineering engagement, there are times when I have to, right off the bat, send a phishing email and ask for credentials, but I typically don't. I typically build a rapport with an individual. So I'm going to build a conversation into my ask. I try to never, especially if this is part of a penetration test where I have one shot to get this, or red team engagement, something of that nature, and we're not trying to gauge the different levels of complexity that someone falls for. I'm going to be very, very careful to never come up with my ask as in my first email, in my first communication. I'm going to build into that. So I call up a company. I fake like we are X company. It's the end of the year. We're trying to get rid of $500,000 by the end of the year for tax purposes. We've been eyeing a certain product you sell for a long time. Let's see what we can work out. I'm talking to the sales department. Sales and marketing people are always easy targets. Keep that in mind, because their job is to interact with people. The same goes for HR. Their job is to open resumes all day. And if you can do this right, you can take advantage of that. So back to the sales. I'm going to talk to them, build up a conversation on the phone. We're going to have some email back and forth. And then at some point where it's appropriate, I'm going to slip in my ask. Maybe that's to ask them to download a certain PDF. that shows the schematics of some product we're working on, or I'm going to share a certain file with them, and for some reason my email is blocking it. I can't figure this out. I'm not tech savvy, so I'm just going to put it on OneDrive and share it with you. And that takes them to a fake login portal. I'm going to throw that in at some point after I've already built rapport with this individual, and they're not suspicious of me in the least bit. And I'm also always going to close the loop, and we'll get back to that in a little bit. One thing that can be very, very useful for crafting social engineering attacks is the principle of reciprocation. And if you think about it, you've been taught since the day you were little, your parents taught you, someone does something for you, good manners, what do? You say thank you. Someone holds the door, you say thank you. Someone does something for you, you thank them, you help them. And that is a subconscious tendency that most of us have. So, someone does something good for me, I want to do something good for back. They smile at me, I want to smile back. And as an attacker, I can make a lot of use of that. I do something for you, you want to help me. I hold the door open for you, so you want to hold the next door open for me, and that lets me right through security. There's many ways that you can take advantage of this. All right, so let's talk about actually conducting the social engineering attack and some actual hands-on practical things that you can do. Now, I talked about building rapport with the people that you are targeting. And another tip that I found is only have 1 to 2 things or pieces of information that you want to gather during any social engineering interaction. Okay. If this is a fish, I have one thing I want them to do. I either want them to tell me something, I want them to give me some information about something, I want them to download file, take an action, I want them to log in. One thing I want them to do. Maybe I want them to log in and fill out a form. 2. Keep it at that. Don't start asking for a bunch of information or you arouse suspicions. So for example, social engineering engagement we did recently was phishing, and we were working with a red team, with our red team on the engagement, and we wanted to understand what kind of endpoint protection they were using on their system so that we could create a payload to connect our command and control infrastructure, our server. So what we did, I emailed the individual about a problem with my antivirus. Looked like I was another employee, and I asked them, were they using the same antivirus as I was? And I told them the one I was using. I said, no, mine is not that. And I ended up getting them to right-click, do the properties, see the version, and actually send me a screenshot of exactly what they had. I had one piece of information I wanted from this individual. I'm not going to also go start asking them about what other applications do you see in control panel. When you log in, do you have to do X, Y, and Z? If I need to know that, I'm going to go to another individual and target them. And this actually can be very useful. I can build my knowledge, and I can ask something that seems completely benign to you, person A, take that information, use it in my question to person B, and because I know that, they think I'm legitimate, they give me the next piece of information. I take those 2 pieces of information I know now and go to person C, because I know these 2 things that look even more legitimate, and they give me what I need to know. And now I have a complete understanding of everything I need to know from 3 different people. Then, for your interaction, you have to think about your target's questions or objections. Another quick story. Another phishing scenario. I was able to phish a vice president of a company. We were doing a pen test got his credentials, and I need to bypass multi-factor authentication. So I called the individual up. I planned out a scenario to use. And so the thing with thinking about your questions. And this is something I heard when it came to espionage and tradecraft. I heard someone talk about. Always prepare to never run off the cuff, to never ad lib, but always be ready to ad lib. Those are the 2 rules of espionage, they said. Always be so prepared that you know everything you're going to answer. You don't have to ad lib, but if you have to, be ready to. And I had planned this scenario out so that I did not really have to do any adding lib. So what I did is I called the individual up and I told him, I spoofed my phone number to look like I was coming from another facility, the facility where their security team worked at. I called him. I told him that we had an issue with an authentication server, single sign-on server upgrade. It had gone south. I purposely used big terminology like single sign-on that I knew he probably would not know the meaning of. But things had gone south and people were being locked out of their accounts permanently. We're having all kinds of problems trying to get them back in. We see 5 different accounts that are getting ready to be locked out next. We're trying to preempt this, and I was going to re-authenticate him so he did not get locked out because he had important things to do that day. I told him I just needed to authenticate him. I was going to send him a code, and I needed him to just read me that code so I could type it in, and he should be good to go. It wouldn't take but a couple minutes. I had just done it with another person whose name he knew, and it worked flawlessly for them. He proceeds to notice that my spoof number had a little funny something about it. It wasn't coming from a straight extension. He wanted to know why my number looked that way. So I answered him. I'm actually on vacation. I'm in the mountains. No, I said I'm on vacation, and because it was so bad, I'm having to help. And he said, "Where are you on vacation at?" I had planned for this in case I got that question. I said, "I'm in the mountains in Tennessee in a cabin. I'm remoted on, and I'm trying to help. That's why my phone number looks funny." Okay. I'm sorry to hear that you're being pulled out of your vacation to do this. And now he feels bad for me, and he wants to help me get this done so I can get back to my vacation. I completely turned it on. And sure enough, we were able to pull it off, get his codes, bypass 2-factor authentication. We're in the vice president of the company's account, added our own phone numbers as alternative 2FA. And from then on, we have persistent access for the rest of that engagement. But again, the point of that story is think ahead about their questions, their objections, and how you can overcome those questions or objections without looking like you really want that information casually, but also being ready to back off if you need to. If I did this on another engagement, I asked an individual about their antivirus. They didn't want to answer me. I said, "Look, I completely understand. I'm glad you are cautious. I'm glad you don't want to give this information out on the phone. That's really good. I'm going to send so-and-so down. They're going to come to your desk. I'll try to get them there in the next 30 minutes and let them get the information. You can send it to me." That put them at ease, and they actually gave me the information I wanted. I didn't have to do anything. So when we start with OSINT, or open source intelligence, to have the information that we can use in our attacks, where do we begin? In search engines, number one, you can find so much on Google. Google is a hacker's gold mine. You can find all kinds of information from Google. So what I want to do is I want to walk through a few, what they're called Google dorks. And they are ways to do special searches within Google. And I advise you to actually go look this up, the Google Dork Library. There are tons and tons, and there are very complex ones that you can use. You can put in certain searches that will give you certain server operating systems based on headers and all kinds of things you can do. And so you should really spend some time getting familiar with them and looking them up. So a simple, putting something in quotes, you're going to search for that exact text. If I put in quotes at whitehouse.gov, I am going to get actual email addresses. If I put in text colon, same thing. Now it is looking for those email addresses inside the text or the body of the page. Maybe I want to look at a specific website only. I can do site : and then whatever I want to search for. And now I'm only looking for that item on that single website. If I'm trying to find subdomains that a company might have, I might use something like crt.sh and look at the certificate history for their subdomains, or I might use this first Google Dork here, where it is site : cisco.com. And then the negate sign means not www. So what that effectively does is I'm looking for anything cisco.com, but not www.cisco.com. And I'm going to get it, but all the subdomains of cisco.com. I might want to look for PDFs that have been left, documents that have been left unrealized, with something like confidential in the title or passwords on that site. And as I am creating my social engineering dossier, what I typically do is I find all the individuals who work for a company that I can, and I research each individual. If a social engineering engagement is going to last a week, I spend 2 weeks prior learning as much as I can about the individuals I'm going to be targeting, or the ones who are in scope. I want to know, I'm looking for their email addresses, sensitive or confidential files like those Google Dorks we just talked about, presentation files. Has someone from their company spoken at a conference and given a presentation that maybe that presentation has information about some of the technology they're using, events they've been to or are going to. There's plenty of scenarios I can create around events. Maybe they're going to an event and they're excited and they've been tweeting about it or posting on Facebook, and maybe they're sponsoring the event, and I can create a scenario where, oh, we forgot to have you sign this one document. Can you download this and sign it? And that's a malicious document. Any awards or recognitions they've received. I talked about the story about how we use that. Their children's names, because that's something they might be using in their passwords. If I'm going to do a password spray, I'm going to create my own dictionary. Pets' names, their dogs or cats. I want to know their background, birthplaces, high school, their engagement photos, their maiden name, anything about their personal lives that will give me information. And I could create scenarios around this information, or I can put those keywords into a script while creating a password dictionary to use in either brute force or password spraying attacks. The Wayback Archive Time Machine is another good resource. You can look on websites who has worked in the past, because you can go back and look at history, things they've done in the past, events they've gone to, announcements they made, all kinds of things. Google News, if I'm looking for, in this case, news about Capital One, I put in the company that I'm doing reconnaissance on, or OSINT on, open source intelligence gathering, hitting news in Google, and I can get recent news about them, announcements they've made. Again, email addresses are very valuable. In some ways I can get email addresses are the Google Dork I mentioned earlier, just simply putting quotes at that domain, their domain ending. There's a tool in Kali called the Harvester. And the command to run is simply the harvester-d domain. And the White House the domain you're looking for in this case is whitehouse.gov. And it will search, and you can also specify what search engines to search through. I can specify Bing, Google, except Firefox, etc. And it will pull email addresses for that domain. If you know you found a domain or an email address and you're unsure, you want to verify it, you can use this LinkedIn, that particular address for the individual, and you can see if that email address is legitimate or not, if it's only used for their LinkedIn account. I always want to know where email is going. So I'll typically use something like the MX Toolbox or a similar tool, put in the domain, figure out where their MX records are pointing to. So this company, their MX records are pointing to Sophos. So I know they're using a Sophos email security filter. If they're pointing straight to Microsoft, then my job is a lot easier, because Microsoft doesn't do the best job filtering emails. And this also will can give me some information about what tools I need to use. If the company is using Microsoft Office 365 as their email, maybe I'm going to buy a legitimate domain and use Office 365 to send that, because Office 365 is going to trust Office 365, right? Unless I do something super fishy or spammy, it's going to go straight to their inbox and not get caught in spam filters. If they're using the G Suite platform, Google platform with G Suite, maybe I will set up my email using G Suite, so it will again be trusted and go through and straight to their inbox without being filtered. Of course, social media. You can find all kinds of information about individuals on social media. And a few examples on this Instagram post. All right, let's see what I know about this individual. I can look at the likes and the comments, who's liking this. I can start finding other employees who work for this. I can find their family members, who their friends are. Maybe I can go look at their friends and find some of the hobbies they like, things they've done together, who their followers are, who they follow, what are the subject matter that they're following. In this scenario, in this photo, I have pictures of their family. Who are these cards from? What kind of water is that they like? Now, as I go and do some more reconnaissance and figure out who their family are, now I can identify these individuals. Who's that guy in the background? Is that employed? Do I see him anywhere else? Can I figure out what department this is based off of that? Looking out the window, what buildings do I see? What operating system is this individual using? There are all kinds, what applications are open on the computer, all kinds of things I can gain about this. The dress code. Is this casual Friday? Is this a relaxed company? All kinds of information. Oh, look at this one. I now see all of the programs they're using, all of their shortcuts. If I can enhance this a little bit, I know what sports team they like. I see some of the people following them who like this, and I can gain a lot of information about this. I know they like donuts. Maybe that becomes a scenario if I'm going to do physical penetration testing. Maybe I wait for this individual to come and I have a box of donuts in my hand. I need them to open the door for me. In this picture, it seems like there's not a lot, but there's a lot to be learned. I know what operating system they're using. I see the kind of phone they're using. It's a VoIP phone. So maybe I can create a scenario where I'm sending, quote, a voicemail that they need to open. I see that there's no printer on this individual's desk, so maybe they're using a shared printer in this office. Maybe I can create a phishing email that is, quote, you got a scan from X printer, and that might seem normal to them. Now, again, badges. This is great information for me. I know exactly what the badges look like. If these are RFID, maybe I create a backpack scanner, I bump into them outside, I clone their RFID. Now I can create a badge that looks legitimate. Again, more badges. I see the barcode, I see how they're set up. I see employees. There's lots of information to be gained. A couple other places when it comes to Instagram you can use, or social media in general, is igstory.com. You can look up individuals, search my bio, and it will pull from different social media accounts. Twitter, of course, is a great resource for conducting OSINT learning about an individual. If it's a company, I can see who the followers are. Maybe their employees are among those followers. I can start figuring out who employees are, who works with who. I can see any recent events they've had, any changes, announcements they made, upcoming events they're going to, and like that scenario I mentioned a few minutes ago. You're going to this event, hey, I forgot to send you this one document I need you to sign, and there's a payload in a document, or something they need to run. If I'm targeting a building for physical penetration testing, now it's getting less common for people to do geotagging on their images, but it still does happen. And you can use this search on Twitter. You put in a geocode, and all right, so if you go and you find the coordinates of the building, I can put in the coordinates of that building and the radius I want to search. And then anything on Twitter that has been geotagged within that radius, I will get those search results, those in my search results, those images, what that might be. I can start piecing information together about a company. Whether people are going around that company, maybe the restaurants they're visiting frequently because it's within that radius. Of course, the company you're looking at, you can look at the media. That's my company, by the way, CyberX Security. That's our Twitter handle. You can look at the media, find images. You can go to tweetbeaver.com. You can download friends, followers, conversations they've been a part of. There's lots of information to gather using social media. LinkedIn, a great resource for OSINT. I can find employees' names. I know what department they work in, what certifications they have. I've used that in the past against people, certification tests, renewals, etc. I know their responsibilities, what they do for day to day. Some people mention the specific tools they're using. And now I can find out bosses' names, who's boss, who's our own departments based on their titles. Again, some of the solutions and software that are in use, if their bios are too specific. Lots of information you can gain on LinkedIn. And finally, another great resource is communities and forums. Stack Overflow. People are going to these forums, they're asking questions, things like Stack Overflow, Spiceworks. And these are more on the tech side of things, but there's other forums for other departments as well, finance. And so if I'm targeting this company right here and I've identified a user, maybe by a handle they use, I see they use the same handle on Twitter as they use on Instagram, as they use everywhere else, or they use their name straight on there, or their company name. And in this case, as you see, I know exactly the version of software they're using. I know they're using ESXi 6.5, they're using pfSense 2.4.4. I see a little bit about what they've tried, their setup, and this is great information for me as an attacker. We found code bases, which we'll get to in a second, GitHub repositories. There might be hard-coded credentials in, there might be keywords, comments left in, describing things that can be very useful for me as an attacker. Documents, again, I mentioned the file type, and this is from a real penetration test that we did. This was a confidential document that had been put on a website, not realized it was accessible to the public, trying to share it with some people, and this was available to us. And I can look for PowerPoints, PDFs, documents, text files, Excel spreadsheets, CSVs, and videos. Like I mentioned, if I'm targeting someone, I'm going to try to find some videos of them. I want to know the words they use, how they talk. And if I'm going to have a phone conversation with them, I'm going to talk like them. I'm going to use the words they use, and they're going to like me because I am like them. Of course, IP addresses. You can use things like Shodan to put in a company's domain, find IP addresses, mail servers, related IP addresses. So we understand social engineering attacks are dangerous. We have a high success rate. Typically, on our engagements, we typically have between a 40 and a 50% click rate. And we typically get credentials for at least 15%. And we can typically bypass multi-factor authentication with ease. And that's average over many engagements. Sometimes we are more successful, sometimes less. But that's about our average. And that's bad. For the companies being targeted, that's bad. We know it's a problem. And the reason we're doing this is to train them, right? We're doing this to help the company improve. We're not bad guys. We want to help the company improve. So what can we do to train employees? I want to spend a couple minutes on this to do better. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So I want to show you a couple of fake portals. This is one thing we've done in engagements. It's been very successful. And in this case, we'll buy a legitimate domain, set up a real website. Maybe we're using something like WordPress or some other template we can put together real fast. This is for email phishing for a fake 401 website. And this is the real 401k website. And this is our fake portal that we can set up. As you can see, they're pretty similar. Most people would fall for it. This is a fake Office 365 portal we set up, a fake LinkedIn portal, a fake OWA portal. And again, they look very legitimate to a user. We always have HTTPS certificates, so they look even more legitimate. They're not getting a bunch of warnings. Maybe I'm trying to get them to install some kind of software and app. A malicious document is a good attack method. And this is an example of an engagement we did. Someone tweeted about a test they had failed, the OSCP, the Offensive Security Certified Professional exam. And so we bought a domain very similar to the real domain. We sent them an email saying, hey, we realize that everyone who took the test on certain days, we gave them the wrong testing environment. We're really sorry. We want to give you an opportunity to retake the test for free. Please fill out these questions so we can get the ball rolling. And this was actually a security analyst at this company. They downloaded the form, which was payloaded, and gave us a command shell. So now on to what I was getting ready to get to. How do we change this? How do we improve? And security awareness training is important, but I also like to recommend what I call an OSINT self-assessment. Take a few minutes and encourage the employees that you're either testing or at your company to do this as well. Encourage them to take a few minutes and go look at their web life, their web presence. Go look at social media. What kinds of things are known about me? Look at the pictures of you. What can be inferred about you from those pictures? What do people know about you? Before you post something, do an assessment. What is the information in this photo, in this tweet, in this message I'm about to post? What is it? Because that is now public about me. And now I'm going to be cognizant. If that information is an attacker tries to use that to target me, I know, hey, that's public information. You're using that against me. Next, never trust, always verify. You always teach employees to always verify. If there's a question about something, if they have a hesitance, ask. Don't be afraid. Create an environment where people are encouraged to verify. They're encouraged not to take action swiftly. And do that verification out of band. So if someone sends me an email I'm not sure about, I'm going to call them up on the phone. I'm not going to use the phone number and the signature. I'm going to either go to their website, go to my contact list, the phone number I know for them. If they call me up and I start asking questions and say, hey, I know you have a job to do. I want to verify. I'm going to send you an email to your email address and just reply back to that. I know you're legitimate. Don't change to some email address they tell you. Do the one you know for them and verify it. Do some kind of alternate method than what they are communicating with you on. And as an attacker, that's the worst thing I can hear. I'm going to send you an email because I know I'm not going to get it. And the final tip I have is teach individuals this. If an email exchange interaction causes any kind of emotion, be that fear, excitement, anxiety, pressure, again from authority, compassion, pride, happiness, any kind of emotion, stop reading that email. Don't take any action. Go do something else for 5 minutes and come back and read it again when you're thinking clearly and you're out of that emotion, because it's likely not to be real and you're going to be in a better state of mind. If you have to, ask a coworker, what do you think about this? And if you do this, you're going to stop your employees, the people you're training, to stop such a high percentage of attacks. If you're looking for some resources to learn even more about some open source intelligence, this is a great book, Open Source Intelligent Techniques by Michael Bazell. You can pick it up on Amazon. I think it's between $30 and $40, not terrible. But there's like tons and tons of tools in there that he goes through one by one on how to use them, how to conduct OSINT investigations. And finally, here is a QR code that you can scan if you trust me. It'll give you the slides for this presentation if you're interested in them.